Rock from Fayetteville, Texas. And Rock wants to talk to us about transhumanism. How's it going, Rock?
Zarok. X-A-R-O-K.
X-A-R-O-K.
Sorry.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about transhumanism. You were kind of telling me about a little bit about your thoughts on it over the phone before we got things started, but tell me about that again. What does that mean? What does that look like for you?
So the definition I've come to is just letting people be whatever they want through technology, including being not dead.
Okay. So go on.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah. So in the context that I've seen transhumanism, it's kind of talking about a future society, almost like a technological transformation of human beings, kind of like the next step in humanity. Is that kind of where you identify with that, or where you want to go with that?
Yeah. To me, it's really just, basically people can live the way they want to, or they can, embrace things like genetic engineering to, improve their lifespan or their health in general, or even make them stronger or faster than like people are nowadays. Or they could do the same thing through bionics. Basically anything you see in a science fiction movie probably has some element of transhumanism in it. Basically it's human enhancement, or just improving the human condition through technology.
Yeah, I like that. Improving the human condition through technology. Basically kind of a full embrace of technology for whatever solutions it can provide us. I think that's really interesting. Drew, what do you think about that?
So I like to think a lot about, since I have become just a little bit of a public figure, about word choice and labels. And just kind of the messages that they portray. And I'm wondering, I don't know if you happen to describe yourself as transhumanist to like newer people that you meet or friends or whatever. But I think that I've seen one thing when people say, oh, I'm a transhumanist, people say, oh, that means that you're all for all changes to human beings. Like any kind of genetic engineering to human beings is fine as long as it like provides like a health benefit or something like that. There are no moral, ethical concerns or anything. Like there's no moral or ethical concern to making it to where, oh, this baby is about to have Down syndrome and like be born with Down syndrome. Okay, we're going to go and do genetic engineering to where they're not, or something like that. So there's no more people that are born with Down syndrome. So do you ever face any kind of maybe discrimination? That could be a harsh word to use, but do you get people like jumping to conclusions about what you actually think when you use that word?
Not me personally. I really don't I avoid conflict whenever I can, basically.
Okay.
So I don't bring it up around people that I don't think would be cool with it. Basically, most of my friends know that I identify that way, but I don't generally tell people that I'm not already. I don't know. I usually have a pretty good idea of what the person already believes when I tell them about it. So, but I have seen lots on Reddit is the main place where I interact with other transhumanists, and there's lots of posts about people that disagree with what they think transhumanism is, and come up with objections like the classic one being like, if immortality is achieved through technology, aren't you worried that like the rich and corrupt would get it first, and then they would be immortal and everybody else would die off? That kind of stuff. So I know some of the arguments against it, but I haven't never been personally conflicted, or I don't know.
Interesting. So this is a very particular question, and I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not, but I am curious because I've never actually had really a conversation about this before. So it's kind of interesting to me. The idea of like a technocracy, or the idea that artificial intelligence should make some of our public policy decisions for us. does transhumanism, or at least your view of transhumanism, has anything to say about that? Do you think it's okay for robots to make decisions about how we run our societies, how we, run ourselves and, our daily lives?
I personally think that that could be a good idea. I think that a lot of movies make AI look really evil, and I tend to go against whatever a movie says in the negative light of technology. I always look at the opposite way, because I guess I'm gadflying or something. But I don't really know if that's transhumanism.
Okay.
A lot of transhumanists talk about that sort of topic, though.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I don't want to speak for all of them, for sure. Somebody else might say, oh, that's definitely transhumanism. To me, transhumanism is more just like the physiology of a human.
Okay.
Rather than governments or anything like that.
So I'm curious to know your reason behind your belief. What would you say is the best reason you can come up with as to why, Drew and I should accept transhumanism as a philosophy?
Well, it's okay. So I guess you'd have to start off already kind of wanting people to be whatever they want. Like, I don't know, kids are told when they're kids that you could be the president if you wanted, you could be whatever you want, that kind of thing. So it's kind of just the natural extension of that. If you wanted to be, I don't know, taller than you were, something that, you're without genetic modification or some other types of prostheses, you're never going to be taller. You're just kind of stuck with what you've got. So I think I don't like that we're basically forced to be whatever we are by our biology, by basically random chance. And I'm a big proponent of I don't like it when people are proud to be, proud based on the circumstances of their birth. I'm a proud Texan because I was born in Texas. It's why are you proud of being born in Texas? Maybe if you moved to Texas, then you can be a proud Texan. But if you didn't really have a choice in the matter, I don't know why you'd be proud of it. But you can take that to other things like gender, race, all kinds of stuff. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm rambling at this point.
No, I get that. Yeah, I can speak for that on the gender, at least. I don't know about you, Drew, but there was always, you grew up in Texas like I did. There was this idea of this proud, manly man culture. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5". I don't care what anybody says about my manhood. You know what I mean? It doesn't really mean anything to me, I enjoy, I don't know, outdoors activities and things like that, which is traditionally associated with manhood, but I do think that that's kind of silly. I don't know. What do you think, Drew? What do you think about transhumanism as it's being described here?
Well, just to think about the way that transhumanism may be perceived, I think a little interesting and probably necessary parallel to understand is, so maybe 200 years ago, people would say, a progressive person might say, oh yeah, women should be able to vote, or that men that don't own property should be able to vote, or that women should be able to work just the same, or anything like that we kind of take for granted in Western society right now. People would have said, oh, that's a humanist idea, and there were a lot of religious objections to that. And I think that maybe in the early 1900s, we would have looked at certain medical technology that we have, like CRISPR-Cas9 and things like that for genetic modification, or even things that are like wearing prosthetics or having a pacemaker. People would have probably had more religious objections to that 100 years ago or so, and said, oh, that's something like transhumanism. But the more that society actually adopts it because certain bits of humanism, certain bits of transhumanism are useful, they don't really care what it's called. They just kind of adapt it, and they say that they never had a problem with it, or that their belief system never had a problem with it. And so, yeah, I guess that you could probably define transhumanism in a few different ways, and there'd probably be ways that I would object to. But if you're looking at it kind of from a historical, cultural type perspective, then I think that some objections that would be raised organically in a lot of conversations to transhumanism would basically be the same objections that were raised to humanism longer ago, if that makes sense. So I think that in a way we're all transhumanists. Like everyone in Western society that believes in normal medical technology, just to a completely average extent, is a transhumanist compared to any given person that existed just about like 100 years ago. So whether or not it's being defined in a way that we accept now from people who are really being forward and talking about transhumanism, you're probably already a transhumanist from a certain perspective, from an older perspective. So at least more than pretty much all of humanity ever has been. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree. I think I'm probably more transhumanist than I'm not transhumanist. I've definitely never used that label for myself. I do use humanist, secular humanist. Haven't added the extra part to that, but yeah, it's always fascinated me. I definitely would have to look into it more for myself. There are questions of what's best for us and how much, like, artificial intelligence or genetically modified products can affect us in that way, that there's just a lot of unknown variables there that would concern me from the forefront. But I don't know. I think I have to agree with the caller. I think that it's definitely an interesting philosophy that more people should look into for themselves, and we seem to be heading more that way. It's going to become more and more relevant years to come. What do you think, Zrock?
Yeah. So I guess I would say that transhumanist is kind of humanism plus technology, kind of speculative technology, basically. I know there's a lot of very libertarian transhumanists. They're kind of like super pro-capitalist, that kind of thing. I'm not really one of them, but I tend to agree with pretty much all the general humanism label as well. Definitely call myself a liberal.
So let me ask you this. What would lower your confidence in transhumanism being a good philosophy?
I'm not sure. I guess if we could prove, like, if we had a society where everyone was allowed to be whatever they wanted physically, and that just turned out really horrible for everyone. Like, if everyone was allowed to be immortal and whatever gender, whatever race, whatever, like, even going so far as like species, like you could.
So basically, if everybody had Second Life in real life,
essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then that just.
Well, you've seen what Second Life looks like. I don't know if I want to live in a world that looks like Second Life.
I haven't personally seen Second Life.
Oh man, it's
play it, and I'm terrified.
It's a treat. It's a treat. Let me tell you. So that's interesting. So what if we could like simulate that? You know, I mean, we have seen a lot of new kinds of population simulation technology in the past couple of years, like for trying to see how like standard minimum incomes have worked, you know, different religious populations and stuff. It's been really fascinating to see the kind of predictions of social change through that. Do you think that that would be a valid mechanism of determining whether or not transhumanism is a good philosophy to follow, like doing these kinds of simulations? I'm trying to think of ways to test these things, because it's a broad term that makes a lot of broad claims. So that would be the way I would go about that. What do you think?
So yeah, I guess if you could figure out how to simulate that, I would probably go with that. interesting that you mentioned simulation, because a lot of transhumanists are less interested in physical modification or genetic or whatever, and more interested in just digitizing themselves, uploading their minds into a computer simulation and living their lives through that.
Yeah.
I'm personally, I mean, I'd be okay with that if they could get it as good as real life, but it brings up its own problems. So.
Yeah, very, very interesting topic of conversation. But I think we're going to move on to some other callers. But Rox, thanks for calling in. Really appreciate it. And we hope to hear you again from you whenever we get this thing really going on the air.